Hey everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this really nice text animation effect using some simple CSS and JavaScript. I've got a super simple web page here with a background image, an overlay with a gradient on, and a H1 tag with some text in. I've chosen to use Harley Davidson as a theme because I really like this image I found, and I think the text works well for what I'm trying to show here. The way this is going to work is using JavaScript, I'm going to target the H1 element here, extract the inner text from the H1, and put it into an array. And then I want to loop over each letter in the array and create a span and insert the letter into the span and then apply the transition styling. There are a couple of very simple but key styling rules here. The first is the data animate property, which has an opacity of 0. And the second is the animated class, which will be added to the elements that are going to animate. And that has an opacity of 1 and a 1 second transition with a cubic Bezier curve to it. So in our JavaScript file, the first thing I'm going to do is target the heading. And then I'm going to create a function called trigger animation sequence, and then give it a parameter of element. So what I want to do is pass the heading into the function, which is the element that we want to animate. I'm going to create an array from the inner HTML. So const letters array equals element inner HTML. And then we're going to use the trim method, which will remove white space and then split using an empty string as a parameter. That means it's going to split for every letter. Then if we console log the letters array, we should get an array with all of the letters in it in the console. Great. So now that I've done that, I want to loop over each letter in the array, and then give the parameter of letter as an argument. And then for each letter, we want to create a span, create element span, and then also create an attribute. Create attribute data animate. Remember, the data animate is the attribute that we've also applied styling to. So every element that has this attribute will have the opacity of 0. And now we want to select the span and then set attribute. And then set the inner HTML of the span to the letter that's being looped over. And then we want to add some styling to it. We're going to give it a transition delay. Before we do that, we should create a delay variable starting at 0. In order for it to animate sequentially, we want to increase the delay for each iteration. So we're going to say span.style transition delay equals, and then we can use some backticks. Delay, and then milliseconds. And then for each iteration, we can increase the delay by maybe 100. So each time this loops over, it's gonna add to the delay, and it will create it will give us that staggered animation. So next we want to do element, which is the parent element, append child, and then we're going to append the span to it. This needs to be set attribute node, not set attribute. Okay, so now if we inspect this, so we've got the text and we've also got the spans. What we forgot to do is actually clear the inner HTML before we run our for each loop. So we need to make sure that we give the inner HTML an empty string, And we also need to animate each letter. So we can add span, class list, add, animated. So although that's actually doing what we want, it's not animating. And the reason for that is because when the browser has to do a lot of animations, it tries to do them all at once within the same flow to try and be efficient. But we don't want that to happen. So we need to add this line here called void span offset width. And what that's going to do is it's going to, every time it loops over that, it's going to calculate the offset width of the span, not do anything with it, but just the calculation is going to it's going to force the browser to render the animation. So now when we reload, we get this nice animation that comes in. And that's doing exactly what we want it to do. I'm going to just decrease this slightly to 70, just to speed it up a little bit. And now we have a really nice animation. The last thing I want to do is add a delay to the trigger animation sequence function so that there's a little bit of a pause before the element unhides itself. So all I'm going to do is just set a timeout of 1000 and put the function inside that. And now when we load our page, it takes a second before the animation begins. But as you can see, the text is still there when we initially load the page. And we need to just add the data animate property to the h1 tag. And then after the for each loop is run, we need to just remove that from the element. Now the element is hidden for 1 second until our function executes. Thanks for watching. I'll leave a link to a code pen in the description.